afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you. So even though I myself am working with the unification movement, I can't take any credit really, for the wonderful work that UPF here in the UK has been doing over the past year. In that sense, I'm more of an observer, I think, and less qualified to speak here than all of you. But by the same score, I feel for that it's fine for me to compliment the UPF staff and all the ambassadors for peace and other friends and colleagues, all of you actually, who have been helping and put on a very impressive range of programs over the past 12 months. And I could observe that it really increased the public presence and effectiveness of UPF in contributing to the betterment of our society, and of course the bigger goal is really peace in the world, isn't it? So I want to say thank you to all of you, and utilizing a handy technique that I've learned from my years in the ministry, and what they call in the Anglican service, giving the sign of peace. Have you come across that? May I suggest now that you turn to those immediately around you, you shake their hand, and you say to them, thank you for all you have done for world peace. Let's do that. I find some of the new initiatives in the UPF calendar, they're most encouraging, really. And among them, I can recall the contribution of the UPF Young Achievers in tackling the stigma around mental health. That's a very interesting new development. And also efforts to move the interfaith agenda, which I think a lot of us are involved with, or have been for many years, towards jointly tackling discrimination, ethnic cleansing, other real problems in the world, and doing this together. So people of faith, including conscientious people of no particular faith, and I think it's very important that we work together, proposing solutions for actual problems. And that was a topic, I think, way back in February, yes, the 7th, right? You did some special event as part of the annual Interfaith Harmony Week. So, wonderful. And there's so much more besides. You probably know the calendar better than I. UPF makes a significant contribution, I think, in identifying the connection between marriage, family, and world peace. And that has also been a theme of some of the programs, including a marriage festival, which we had jointly with the Family Federation and the Women's Federation as well. That was quite recent, but a good new development, I think. And also, you'll find with increasing emphasis, then our founder, David Hanna, is emphasizing the importance of responsible stewardship of our planet, taking care of the environment and of the natural world. So this is something also UPF has been looking into, and I'm sure can do a lot more in the future on this area. You know, I always feel we can make too much of a separation between spiritual and physical life. Treat them as almost two different things, right? The material and the spiritual. And religion itself has not always helped in this regard, I think, to making these two realms seem enemies of each other. But these fundamental aspects of life need to be harmonized, and I see that kind of well harmonized in UPF's approach. On that score, there are two books come to mind that I've read this year. Not the only two, but I mean, there are two books in particular, right? Two books in particular. The first, it has an interesting title of Stuff Matters. Stuff Matters is by Mark Viadovnik, and a curious kind of book that focuses a little bit on the history of and the way we can kind of inspire delight in mankind's material creativity, the things that we've developed, you know, in our kind of work with physical substance. Does that mean? It means looking at like the whole history of concrete and what that enabled us to do, right? For example, it leads us to appreciate such facts as I don't have them here, but before the invention of a glass, to hold water. No, it's all right. It's not a... Don't worry. That was good. Usually it's here somewhere, you see. But I realised, no, it can't be. Before the invention of the glass beaker, and nobody here can remember that far back, right? But there was a time when there were no glass beakers, right? And then somebody, hey, look what I've made, you know. Somebody had this glass beaker. But before that, no one had the enjoyment, or even, I guess, a kind of reassurance of actually seeing what it was you were drinking. You know, what's lurking at the bottom of the cup, you don't know, right? But with the invention of glass, for the first time you could see, you could check the kind of purity of what you're drinking. Now, that might not have never occurred to me, you know, but it's interesting to think there was always, with these things, there was a before, and then there's an after. It becomes kind of just so accepted. But, you know, that's just one kind of little insight. It also looks, this book, at the future, the possibilities, things which are you know, becoming a reality, such things as aerogels, if you met them, and new products like graphene. We've heard a lot of excitement about that. Sheets of carbon which are one molecule thick. So maybe eventually I'll be making, they predict, they haven't done it yet, but they'll make kind of TV screens which are like this. Right? So we have a lot to look forward to. I hope it's looking forward, right? In the future, so it's looking forward. I hope it's going to be good. From the religious side, I would say my other book choice to mention is a small, very beautiful book, but I hope will have some positive side effects on my behavior. And my wife will probably support me in this, I think. It's called A Monk's Guide to a Clean House and Mind. By Shuke Matsumoto, a young Japanese Zen Buddhist monk. But it's a very approachable book. He says in this book things like, life is a daily training ground, and we are each composed of the very actions we take in life. If you live carelessly, your mind will be soiled, but if you try to live conscientiously, it will slowly become pure again. If your heart is pure, the world looks brighter. If your world is bright, you can be kinder to others. He goes on to describe the temple regime, as the Japanese Buddhist temple, for cleaning and the approach to using and caring for material things. So the more spiritual path actually shows more care and appreciation for the material. If you read the sermons of Reverend Moon, you will find them peppered with this kind of advice as well. Such things as like how to organize your sock drawer, or which trouser leg to put on first in the morning. Things which help to get your life spiritually in order, even though they seem almost too mundane to consider, right? But there it is, right? This is the advice, and you know, if you respect the master, you should try to, you know, at least incorporate it, or have a good reason why not. Right? So, this monk comments that nothing starts out as rubbish. Things become rubbish when they are treated as rubbish. What's a little bits of wisdom in there, right? And people who don't respect objects don't respect people. The material and the spiritual, sometimes people refer to it as being like two sides of a coin, but even that, I think, is not a very good analogy, really. We talk about inner and outer, but this too, it implies a kind of separateness, I think, which doesn't exist, actually. These two are intertwined. Maybe the relationship is more like milk in your coffee, although that might reveal some of my preferences, I don't know. Material things over spiritual things. Anyhow, if we become more concerned about and caring towards the natural world, I believe we must become, as a consequence, more caring toward each other. When we first saw pictures of the Earth from space, which is actually an experience enjoyed only quite recently by humankind. I think I have
That's nice, David.
When we first saw this, right, there was a time again when people had never seen this, right? And then we saw these first pictures. Right? It's not really strikingly beautiful, right? And still appears so. But it almost elicited some kind of surprise to see that the world, actually it doesn't exhibit those lines and those different colors that you have on world political maps. You know, you had a map in your classroom when you were growing up, and it was something like this, right? It had this kind of thing. Oh, the world actually doesn't look like that, right? It looks quite different. And no lines, no borders, no different colors, or political allegiances, you know, they kind of fade into a unity there. So, here I've shown you two depictions of the world, and I want to show you one further one. This is an illustration I came across recently. It comes from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Center in cooperation with NASA. It's not a photograph, and it may take a bit of working out, first of all, if you haven't seen it before, but I found it quite staggering, and I still do when I look at it. I look at this quite a lot, actually. Can you work out what it is? Have you seen that? Yeah, so imagine all the surface water, all the oceans, seas, lakes, rivers, everything, all the surface water on our planet was rolled into a ball. And it would be the size of this blue ball hovering above America. I've shown this to some people and they just didn't believe me. They just said, no, it can't be like that. It can be, actually. You know, I've used some illustrations in my lectures before that have turned out to be hoaxes. So you have to be very careful what you're researching on the internet nowadays. There was one that was using regularly. It's with a Nile crocodile with its mouth open, and inside a little bird called a Nile plover. It's a wonderful, wonderful kind of a demonstration of how evolution can get it wrong, because how could this ever come about that this bird can, you know, be allowed to pick little grubs from the teeth of a crocodile without getting eaten? But now there's some doubt over this now. So anyway, I think there are things in nature which do that, but there are also some kind of bits of fake news, this kind of thing, right? But my research about this picture confirms that it is indeed true. Although we think that the oceans are really vast, you know, and area-wise, of course they are, maybe 70% of the surface of the world is water, they are in fact very shallow compared with the diameter of the Earth. We don't think that way, but you know, that's the reality. So this indicates how fragile the planet's ecosystem is, why pollution, particularly from plastics, etc., is a serious problem, and why we have to protect the oceans and the seas. In our worldwide unification movement over this past year, we've had a region, we're gathered here, the Europe and Middle East region. It includes 72 nations, actually, and this has been in place for this past year. So UK UPF, I think, is somewhere of a microcosm of this region, if not of the world, right? And that's one of our great advantages being here in London. So we have more opportunities, potentially, I think, for interaction and peacemaking activities that cross borders and that unite cultures. Next year, I believe maybe fairly early next year, there will be a peace summit in North Africa, and that will be particularly supported by Europe and Middle East region. So we should be thinking of ourselves here. You should be thinking of yourselves as a kind of significant contributing body to build bridges and to heal the world, and we look forward to that. In Albania, they are aiming to set up UPF peace councils in all the local districts. I think there's 90-something local districts, and we've set them up already in more than 60 of those local districts. So imagine, you know, closer to home, imagine that we have peace councils in all our major cities in Britain, or in all the counties, offering a sensible voice that addresses issues in a balanced and a harmonious way, inner and outer, spiritual and physical, milk in the coffee, wonderful approach. That could make a difference, couldn't it? It could be a very valuable voice. UPF, as you know, has certain principles. The unification movement calls the essential thought at its heart the principle, or the divine principle. In UPF we speak of the unification principles, or principles of peace. It's really heading at the same kind of core. As with a person who has principles, they are not always immediately obvious, but one becomes aware of them through knowing the person, through seeing them in different situations, through growing to have trust in them. And if their principles are higher and more enduring than one's own, hopefully having something of that rub off by being in relationship with them. So, in this regard, I encourage you to look further into the thought of UPF founder, Reverend Sun Myung Moon. These ideas are not narrowly religious, far from it, I think. Rather, I believe they provide a very essential and accurate framework for building a balanced and harmonious life, where the spiritual and the material may relate together very properly, and on which we can build a life where our order of priorities are really in tune with the way the universe operates. Therefore, it's very key, it's very essential, and very much needed. One of Reverend Moon's mantras was unity first, and then love, and then the ideal. But we have to have things in the right kind of order. You can't force unity. Right? So I want to close, if I may, by reading from a source that gives me a lot of reassurance and spiritual comfort. It comes from a little book called Opening Doors Within. These are messages that Eileen Caddy, you might have heard of her, she was one of the founders of the Findhorn group in Scotland. She received as daily inspirations from God, and this is how she interpreted this experience. I actually bought 12 copies of this little book and gave to significant women in my life. So, being a rather superstitious old sod myself, I only read the one which is dedicated to that day. Right? So here is the message for today, which is December the 1st. Right? And please, I ask you to see if this is not wholly appropriate. This message says, leave yesterday behind and move swiftly into this wonderful new day, knowing that it holds within it only the very best for you, and expect only the very best to come out of it. See my hand in all that is taking place, and behold the birth of a new heaven and new earth. Fear not, for it is my good pleasure to give you the kingdom not tomorrow or sometime, but today. Can you accept that anything can happen today? Are you prepared for the most wonderful happenings to take place? It helps to hasten things on and enables you to see only the very best come out of every situation. In fact, because you are looking for the very best, you help to bring it about. By this very positive action, you create the right conditions, the right environment for the unfolding of the new. You become like a midwife, ready to assist in every way to bring it forth. So today, as poor UPF activists and peacemakers, I give you a new title, that of midwives. Assisting the birth of a new and better world order. Thank you once again for your wonderful work. And God bless you.